Welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life, and my name is Neil Vandery. I am your officiator here tonight. Please take your seats, and we're going to get things going because we have two excellent speakers tonight, and both have a lot to say. So I'm going to speak for a shorter period, and we're going to get things going. Our speakers tonight... Oh, also, before I get into that, I do want to make note of the fact that we have not yet notified you of a health fair. There will be a health fair here June 10th, and Brian Clement from Hippocrates will be here speaking. So if you can make it, Saturday, June 10th, you'll hear more about that later in this service. And note that in June and July, we will not be in person. In June and July, we will be on Zoom and live stream only in YouTube. So in June, we have Ilya Stambler, the Chief Science Officer of VTech, the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life in Israel. So he's going to virtually be here with us from Israel. He'll be in Israel at the time, which means our meeting in June will be, now wait for it, Saturday morning, on the morning at 9 a.m., 4 p.m. for his time, and we'll get you information. So long as we have your email, we can get you the information about what's coming up. And then in July, we're very happy to have Gennady Stolyarov, one of the most famous transhumanists in the world. He'll join us. So two amazing presentations. You'll definitely want to enjoy those in Zoom. We record everything. You can watch it in recording, but join us in Zoom and you can take part in the social hour before our service online for the next couple of months. We hope to come back in August, but that's not set in concrete yet, and we'll keep you posted on that. So I'd like to know, George Dubeck, where are you? George, you've invited a few friends tonight. Thank you for that. How many people here are friends of George Dubeck? Hot dog, you've got a whole club here. So how many people are here for the very first time? Here for the very first time, I'd like you to put your hand up, and I want to come out and greet you. This is something we haven't done before, but we're going to do tonight. I think we have some music to accompany this, but those of you who are here for the first time, welcome.
Oh, that all is as it should be, love and light to you. Love and light to you. Love and light is true. Love and light to you. Love and light to you. See all of creation move in transformation. Love and light is true. Love and light to you. Feel the inspiration. Move into co-creation. This insight is true. Love and light to you. It's about the journey, not the destination. Love and light to you. It's about the joy and the celebration. Love and light to you. Love and light to you. Love and light is true. Love and light to you. Love and light to you.
So the song you're hearing is our own Elaine Silver, and I welcome you all to Perpetual Life. I'm so glad you're here for the first time, and there's so many of you, and this is the way it should be, you know? Invite your friends, invite your relatives, invite those people that you care about so that they can take part in all that we're learning here at Perpetual Life. And there's a special thing, those necklaces, they get you to go first in the buffet line after the service tonight. So you move right to the top, right to the front, okay? Yay! Yay. The creed here at the Church of Perpetual Life, we believe that all of life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our gospel, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth now. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, in our unified efforts, become an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy and serving the Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. As I mentioned, we have two amazing presentations for you tonight. We're going to get right into them. Please take notes of your questions. There will be a Q&A, questions and answers, after the presentations. Our first presenter is Erik Nelson. His presentation is Into the World of Longevity Medicine. Erik Nelson is the Director of Clinical Programs at the Health Longevity Clinic right here in South Florida. Erik has years of valuable experience working in the field of personalized medicine and longevity. He played a crucial role in the development of a genomics-based startup that focuses on diet, exercise, sleep, stress, supplementation, genomics, and advanced blood panels. This exposure led to several opportunities, including health coaching, training, teaching, program development, and much more. And with over 5 years of experience and working with over 1,500 patients, he has accumulated a wealth of longevity-focused knowledge, and he's ready to share that tonight with us. So help me welcome to the stage, Erik Nelson, into the world of longevity medicine. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello, puppies. Good to see you guys. Thank you for being here. I'm going to talk about the world of longevity medicine. How many people in this room are familiar with longevity medicine? Awesome. I figured I was speaking to the right group. Who wants to share something they know about the world of longevity medicine? Like what, if you had to define it in your, because I think the definition of it is important, because there's functional medicine, there's integrative, there's holistic, there's a lot of components. I think we call them the elements of aging or the hallmarks of aging. There's organ systems that age, but we'll get into that. First off, I have 2 kids, so you're going to see a few pictures of kids in the slideshow. I just did it because kids are a big part of my life right now. So this is not medical advice, purely educational. I've worked with about 1,500 patients over 5 years, and my dream is to make sure everybody in the world knows about this or has access to it. It has changed a lot of lives, including mine and the people I know, my family and friends. So anything I can do to help other people learn about the things I've learned would be great. Going on to it, I do think that people should be able to enjoy the older years of life. I was talking earlier to somebody here about when you go into a nursing home nowadays, it's quite sad. You know, I mean, the body, the state of the human, the staffing, Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, it's all there. When I did my first nursing home round about 7 years ago, it hit me pretty hard. It hit me a lot. I've been an empathetic person, I think, my whole life. But seeing people in this state, I was like, why is that? Like, why don't these people know more about diet, exercise, sleep, stress, which is not taught in med school. It's not the doctor's fault, but that's just how it is. So what can we do to change that? So I'm on a mission now, and my whole life I'm going to try to just get it out to as much people as I can, and that would be great. So if we can put nursing homes out of business, that'd be awesome, because then we don't need the nursing homes. People can age in place at home. I don't want to take jobs away from anybody, but that'd be a good reason to take jobs away. There is a lack of population-wide education on the possibilities of healthy aging. I just mentioned that. There's just not enough education. In nursing school, I worked at Mayo Clinic for a few years as a nurse, and even at one of the top hospitals in the world, there was just not a focus on prevention. So I found that to be a problem so much. I almost quit nursing school after the first test because we weren't learning about diet. My best friend told me to stick with it because it's gonna pay off, and it did. So do it for the kids. There's a ton of kids, you know, just in Latin America and Mexico alone, the type 2 diabetes rates are absolutely crazy in kids. And they don't know better. So if we can do it for the kids, that's great. People deserve it. People want it. Doctors and patients alone. My last job, we trained about 300 physicians in personalized genomic medicine through a company called Wild Health. If you guys ever want to look that up, it's a great company. wildhealth.com, and they do genetics and medicine and all the lifestyle ways of improving aging and health in general. So tonight, that all was just my why. The rest is, I don't like talking about me a whole lot. The rest is about longevity medicine, why we age, how to improve human health and longevity, which there's a lot of different angles. I'm going to cover as much as I can in this presentation. I guarantee you I'm missing a couple because the field changes fast. And then a little bit about Healthy Longevity Clinic, which just launched in Boca Raton, Florida, which is the second clinic. I'll talk more about that. So first off, what is longevity medicine? It's a blend of holistic. This is my definition. I don't even know if there's a solid definition yet. People, if you want to challenge the definition, please do so. I'm still learning myself. But it's a blend of holistic, integrative, and preventive medicine that includes current research and technologies with the ultimate goal of extending health span, preventing disease, and optimizing the human body. So after age 60, 70, a lot of these disease processes accelerate. So that's a portion of it. Can we catch these early, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? If they're already present, can we reverse them? And then once you get to the point that there's no disease, I call this like stabilizing the blood markers, inflammation, blood sugar, all these things I would check. Once you get those to a good spot, I think the fun begins. That's when you optimize and you kind of bulletproof the body. So you shoot to optimal ranges. If somebody has a VO2 max for exercise and it's a normal VO2 max, we want to get them to optimal. So they have that protection throughout the aging process. I don't need to spend a ton of time on this slide. I think everybody in this room knows the difference between this medicine and traditional. But longevity in a nutshell, proactive, preventive, whole body, personalized, current research, life expectancy 90s to 100s, in a fully functional and happy state. Traditional medicine is kind of the opposite. And I put this quote on the bottom right because I never would say traditional medicine is bad. There's a lot of good things. My son dislocated his arms twice, brought him into the ER at Mayo Clinic, $2,000 bill for not a whole lot, but they're there. I know it's kind of crazy. Thankfully, I learned how to place it now, so I don't have to bring it. Yeah. Why does the human body age? This is the big question. I think people, well, I know for sure, there's a race to measure the aging process. And I'm going to go through some of the things that we know. I doubt we're ever going to find one way to measure it. And if anybody has thoughts on one way to measure, please share. That'd be an awesome conversation. I think it's multifactorial because the body's complex. So I'm going to go over organ systems, the hallmarks of aging, and cellular processes, which all contribute to the aging process. This is how we support it at Healthy Longevity Clinic. This is how also I've thought about it for years. Starting with the four horsemen: brain, cardiovascular, immune, and cancer. And we all know about Alzheimer's disease and heart disease and the immune system and COVID. We're all here and we got through COVID. And cancer. So starting with brain on the far left, that's my lane. I was in the neuro ICU and got really fascinated with how the brain works after trauma. I took care of people that just had tumors removed, motor vehicle accidents, and saw a lot of very intelligent doctors that wrote the book on neurological medicine. I was fascinated with it. That's what got me through nursing school, is my fascination for medicine, not the other stuff I was talking about earlier, the lack of prevention. So right now, Alzheimer's disease, 5.8 million people are affected now. Fast forward 27 years, 13.8 million. And you can see the economic impact of Alzheimer's alone in 2021 is $355 billion. That's a lot. That's a big market. It's a lot of people. And that number is going to keep growing. And that's not talking about the people that are taking care of those with Alzheimer's and dementia. Almost everybody I know is affected. I don't have a lot of it in my family, thankfully, but I know a ton of people, and I give out tons of information. So if anybody wants my contact information and wants information about this, just ask me and I'll help you as much as I can. I I think there's a lot of things we can do about the brain. Dale Bredesen, if you guys have heard about him from UCLA, he's a doctor that wrote a book called The End of Alzheimer's. I would check it out. It's very good. Cardiovascular medicine, so the first organ I talk about is the brain. We're moving to the heart. You can see that's the #1 cause of death, 17 million people per year, which is 1/3 of all deaths that happen that come from heart disease. So targeting the heart and the blood vessels. The immune system, as we age, we just have a decreased ability to fight disease, recognize disease, vaccine effectiveness. So if we can support the immune system, there's a trial called the TRIM-X trial, if anybody in this room has ever heard of that. Have you heard of it? Yes. You have, yeah. A couple very simple interventions to regrow the thymus gland to help people fight disease, especially the flu after age 65. Very interesting. Cancer, super sad. Lots of work going on that. Risk increases with age. Screening is critical. We all know about that, so that's another one. The elements of aging at the core of a lot of this is usually inflammation, blood sugar, and going back to blood sugar, one of the best ways to do it in this medicine is screening blood, insulin, hemoglobin A1C, and fasting glucose. I call it the trifecta, and if those are showing prediabetes markers, one of the best ways to optimize the brain is optimizing blood sugar. And if you optimize blood sugar, there's a lot of processes in the body that will improve, and the Alzheimer's risk will also improve. Strength, balance, and flexibility. As we age, we just don't move like we used to. I think this is a huge opportunity. I think there's a lot of people taking really good supplements and doing therapies, but if our bones and our muscles and our balance aren't there, then we succumb sometimes to falls later in life, and our body can't recover from that. So if we can keep people strong, flexible, and balanced, perfect. Hormones. There's a lot going on there. I'm not going to dig into it. I feel we could talk forever just about hormones. There's a lot in longevity medicine. Joseph Raphael is a doctor in New York City that runs a practice called PhysioAge. If you want to learn more about longevity and hormones, look him up. Peter Attia is another doctor that has some really good research on hormones and aging. All the thumbs up. You obviously have to know who you're dealing with and medical history and all that, but hormones seem to be very good for a lot of body processes. Biological age. Who in here has heard about biological age? Bill? I figured Bill did. Anybody else? Sorry, I just saw Bill's hand. Okay, in the back, yeah. Biological age is, there's a ton of companies out there doing this testing now. So it's a saliva sample in most cases. Take about maybe 15 milliliters, and you send it to the lab. And they actually look at methylation markers on your DNA. A simple way of saying that is rust. How much wear and tear do you have on your body throughout the aging process? They call that biological age. You can Google that, and it's super interesting. That's one of the ways to measure aging. Mitochondria, telomeres. Here we are in telomeres. I know the lady over here mentioned it, but yeah, so if we can protect and preserve the cell, tissue repair, mitochondria on the bottom left. A lot of the stuff we're doing in longevity medicine is aiming to support everything we're talking about, especially that bottom row. Those are kind of what's happening at a cellular level. Telomeres, cellular senescence, NAD. And if you guys want, I know I think some people are taking pictures, but I'd be more than happy to share this with the group after, if you guys are okay with that. So you know. Yeah, yeah. So we just talked about the elements of aging. Does anybody have any questions at this point? We can probably wait till the end. I know we have a Q&A, but maybe break and see if anybody has anything. If not, yes.
You just mentioned NAD.
Yeah.
Become very popular.
Yeah.
And NADH. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So that's people think of NAD in this space, and they think of NAD and energy production in the cell. As people age, mitochondria also are discussed in that energy conversation. Mitochondria are in the cell. NAD levels usually decline with age. There's a company called Ginfinity that's doing a lot of research. Our group is doing a lot of research on NAD, and it is definitely true. NAD levels decrease with age, and there are ways to improve NAD levels through certain supplements. This dog is funny. Certain supplements, one called NMN, not M&Ms, NMN, and I can share this after the show as well, or after the presentation. But if we can improve NAD levels, that is one of these contributors to aging that can be very helpful. Simple supplement. There's IV therapies of NAD. I've noticed that. I'm from Minnesota. I'm not from Florida. And I noticed when I came down here to start the clinic, there's IV stations everywhere. And a lot of people are doing IV NAD. I think the research is mixed on it. I would love to see it's absolutely working. I do know there's more research that supports supplementing with NMN, a supplement, because it's a precursor to NAD. It's like the stepping stone to it. So that's a whole nother conversation. Super fascinating though. David Sinclair at Harvard is the one that wrote a book. Forget the name of his book. If anybody remembers David Sinclair. Thank you. Lifespan. Lifespan is the book that talks about NAD and sirtuins and all that. Improving human health and longevity. So one thing I learned working with so many people, I know for sure, I was burnt out because I was working with so many patients. And in the moment, I didn't see the blessing in disguise of the repetitions and the conversations. So what I'm about to share is a accumulation of all of the experience working with 1,500 people. What worked, what didn't work. So I have it separated into the foundations and next level. You could call that optimization. But making sure the foundation is set is super important, because if somebody's sleeping 2 hours a night and their hormones are shot and you take stem cells, will the stem cells do as much as they really could do if you're sleeping 8 hours a night and your hormones are balanced and stuff like that? So making sure, and this is how we do it at Healthy Longevity Clinic, this is how we did it at Wild Health, making sure the foundations are set. So nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, social connections, the blue zones. I'm sure you guys have all heard of the blue zones. So we're going to talk about the foundations. And what I'm going to do is I may skip over some words. I've got about 9 slides on the foundations. If I'm going too fast, tell me slow down. I just want to make sure I'm not talking too much. But if the information is there and you're enjoying it, there's about like 5 words on each slide, and I'm going to kind of go through them. I may skip some sometimes, but if somebody sees something on a slide they want to hear about or talk about, just yell it out, and we can talk about it. Next level, hormesis. You guys heard about hormesis? No? Hormesis. Hormetic effect of aging. So hormesis, we'll talk about that as well. I get a little excited. The slide, we'll talk about that in a second. Light, longevity medications, advanced therapies, and combination therapies. So the biggest takeaways I could think of and this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. This is just if I had to take an average about all the people I worked with, these are the biggest concepts or the biggest things I learned from nutrition. I think some people can eat meat and they seem to be okay. I think the vegan plant-based diet is amazing because people are getting their nutritional needs. Inflammation tends to be lower. Vascular health tends to be more optimal. But nutrition is a whole separate. I think everybody's so individual. That would be an interesting conversation just to talk about nutrition in general. But this slide is talking about nutrition and fasting. So starting with gluten and dairy, for some reason, and I think I know why, they're inflammatory. They've been modified in the U.S. Agriculture has been tweaked quite a bit. So gluten and dairy, what I've noticed in the 1,500 patients is the people that remove gluten and dairy, they get better. They lose body fat. People are pretty cool with that usually. Their blood markers get better. Their gut function improves. The brain fog improves, especially the dairy with women around menopause. And I don't know why that is. But I worked with a large group of women around peri. Yeah. 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 It's just crazy. The Whole30 diet actually is what I went to a lot, and people just had a lot of success. Yeah. She was saying the hormones from dairy and then the hormones from the human just probably don't get along. Dairy and gluten, simple. If you've never tried it, get rid of it for 30 days, see how you feel. If you don't feel different, then go back. Fasting as a tool. When I started, intermittent fasting. Has anybody here heard about intermittent fasting, extended fasting? Awesome, great. It's a tool. I think, and like I said, when I say these things, it's not everybody should take this and implement it tomorrow because it's true for them. For a lot of people, I noticed they were fasting a lot. So we're kind of a culture of extremes, right? If we hear we should fast, then people go, instead of fasting 16 hours, I just dealt with so many patients that would fast 18 hours, 20 hours. And later in the day, that would lead to dietary sabotage because their nutritional needs weren't met. So lighter frame individuals with normal blood markers, so after you check the blood markers and they don't have a lot of weight to lose, I don't think they benefit from fasting as much as somebody that maybe has some type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome. And this is, like I said, just an observation. This is not truth. This is observations after working with these people and talking to people. Peter Attia, a doctor in Texas, I was really happy when I saw him support this concept too. What they're seeing is bone density issues with people that fast too much. Bones need nutrients. Strength training is amazing for bone health. But if somebody's fasting for too long, for longevity, they could be compromising bone health, which leads to frailty and possible injury later. So just be careful with fasting. It could be amazing for some people, and it's changed lives. It's reversed diabetes. It's an awesome tool. But I tell my family this all the time. I'm like, fast, And if you want to fast for longevity, and you're otherwise healthy and you feel pretty good, once a month, 24-hour fast is great, or 48-hour fast. We talked about the blue zones. Consistency is key. Alcohol, there's the social aspect, tequila. The blue zones, they drink wine, right? So the blue zones drink wine, but it's quality wine. Their whole lifestyle is dialed in. So when they drink wine, it's probably not a big deal. But for the standard American living a standard American lifestyle, alcohol maybe not the best idea, but I'm not here to tell anybody they should or should not drink. I think you should have fun. Moderation's good. Minimizing dietary sabotage. This kind of relates to the fasting comment. I have just worked with a lot of people that at the end of the day, they were fasting all day. They skip breakfast, have a little lunch. End of the day's done. They had a busy day at work, and they go home, and they just eat a bunch of junk food, and they feel bad about it because their body was telling them they needed more food. So that's just another point. Exercise, movement. These are the core foundations, I believe, of keeping the human body in a good state as it ages. Strength, balance, flexibility, heart and lung capacity, functional movement. There's a lot of focus on strength training, I think, in gyms, right? Lifting weights and balance and flexibility. Like the not so sexy things are not looked at as much, but if we can stay balanced and flexible, deep squat, get down to the ground, pick up a Lego. There's another kid comment, but yeah. Sleep and circadian rhythm. Matthew Walker. Anybody here ever heard of Matthew Walker? Check him out. He's amazing. He wrote a book called Why We Sleep. And his comment was, humans try to do a lot of things to outdo the way we're designed, right? So we're designed certain ways. Sleep is one thing we really can't mess with. I think some people can get away with 6 hours of sleep or 5 and be totally fine. I think for a majority of people, taking a look at sleep. Anybody heard of using mouth tape for sleep? Somebody's nodding their head, yeah? Okay, okay. Mouth tape? Yeah? Yeah, yeah. We're designed to be nose breathers, and over time, we start to open our mouth a little bit. And I'm not telling everybody to do this, but for a couple of years, I was a little hesitant. I just put some tape over my mouth and did the dishes, and I noticed my body actually reacted pretty good with it. Now for 2 years, I've been sleeping. I just take 3M, very cheap mouth tape, go right over, and what it does is it helps vasodilate. You have nitric oxide receptors in your nose. James Nestor, I like to throw some names out if you guys want to do research. He wrote a book called Breathe, and he talks all about the science of this. So I don't have to go into that now, but that'd be something to look into. Screens, they disrupt circadian rhythm, especially blue lights at the end of the day. I love watching Seinfeld. Have you guys heard of Seinfeld? It's one of my favorite shows, and I watch it at night. I'm not perfect, but the more we can limit screens, that's usually very good for our sleep. A couple supplements on the bottom there. Be more than happy to share this. These are, I think, the top sleep supplements. Did not mention melatonin. There's conflicting viewpoints on that. It's good, it's bad. I think it's good. But we'll go to the next one. Stress and mindfulness. I was talking to somebody earlier about breathing more. I don't know where he is. But 478, box breathing, HRV, and all these areas of longevity medicine, personalized medicine, I feel stress and mindfulness is the hardest for people to be consistent on. People are consistent with exercise, sleep, so-so. Diet, they're pretty decent, because if somebody comes to us and they're curious about their health, most people are willing to have a good diet and exercise. For some reason, the stress and mindfulness could have one of the biggest impacts, I think, on longevity if somebody really committed their day to just stepping back from the craziness of the world and 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. Very, 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 very helpful. Social connections, back to the blue zones. Very important. There's some stats coming out. Loneliness is the new smoking, and that does not mean we have to have 150 friends. A couple high-quality people around you to talk to is huge. Spend time outside every day. I have 2 kids. One was born in northern Minnesota in the winter. But even then, I try to get her outside to just get the fresh air and get them used to just spending time outside, and especially going back to the kids, just get them outside off the screens and tablets. Very, very good. Green space, air and water. Pay attention to the environment, super important. Hormesis and light, this is back to hormesis. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So cold exposure, you can see this guy here, he might be meditating or he's doing something. Brief exposure to cold showers, cold plunge. The coldplunge.com is a pretty interesting website. You can learn a ton of information. This is amazing. If you don't, I think the cold plunge itself is like $10,000. I don't have that to spend, so I just turn my shower on cold for the last 30 seconds. And I don't really enjoy it, but I like to think it's doing something. I think it increases your attention in learning. Maybe, because you're just zapped with adrenaline. Afterwards, yeah. Blue light time, so heat, sauna, red light. Heat is very good too, not too much of it, so brief exposures to these things. Sunrise in the morning. I did not mention this, but there's a doctor from Stanford called Andrew Huberman, talks about one of the best things you can do for sleep is waking up in the morning and seeing the sun, which when I think of the best way to fall asleep, I'm always thinking of the hour before sleep, but he's saying wake up in the morning and get 10 minutes of sun exposure, and it just jumpstarts the circadian rhythm, and it doesn't cost anything, which is cool. You just walk outside and see some sun. Red light, green light. I've got a red light sauna in my basement, and it's like my best friend. It's just incredible. It's a small little thing. It's got a hole in the side, but it still stays hot, so that's all that matters. But red light has a lot of interesting, there's a COVID study. I think there was 30 people in an ICU unit. They were not to the point of intubation, but they were all close to intubation. They had a high pneumonia score. They had fluid in the alveoli and the lungs. And they put on red light vests on 15 people. So they just strapped them up with a red light vest. And the red light penetrates tissue 8 centimeters. I can't remember the exact thing. If I can find the study, I'll send it to somebody here for the group to look at. But the pneumonia score almost cleared in the people with red light. No other intervention. The fluid from their lungs cleared from red light. So if you haven't heard about red light, there's something called a mito red and a Juve. Mito red and Juve. Little personal red light devices. I've got one. I see somebody writing that down. It's MITO red, and then Juve is JOOV. But if you have a stressful day and you're on maybe calls or just got stuff going on, I would get one of these personal red light devices that come with these glasses. They're black glasses to protect your eyes. Keep your eyes closed and hold that red light device in front of your face for like 10 minutes. Close your eyes. Perfect time to do meditation.
Sorry, I have to ask. Are you talking about red light therapy or infrared therapy?
Infrared. Near or far.
I'll ask you.
Talk a little bit after. I always hear a blanket. I hear red light, and then I hear far and near.
Right.
And far and near do different things. But yeah, I'd love to talk more about that, for sure. And maybe you too.
It's 2 different wavelengths.
Yep, definitely.
One penetrates deeper.
Yep. Green light, I've heard good things about migraine. I haven't personally experienced that. It's just something I've heard from patients that have used it. All the processes related to longevity I mentioned at the beginning of the slide. I don't need to go down all of these. I'd be more than happy to share this. But NMN, somebody asked about NAD. It's an amazing supplement. Rapamycin and acarbose. I think you had a speaker on recently that talked about rapamycin and acarbose combination. Synergistic works, yeah. So if we can find these supplements that support these processes and then gets on some sort of supplement protocol that includes these, you are supporting many of these systems of aging. I'll hold it there. Somebody's taking a picture, so I'm just going to hold it there for a second. Glycine and NAC, if I was going to talk about one right now, I mean, rapamycin and acarbose is super interesting, but if anybody wants to look up the research on glycine and NAC, some amazing things happening on boosting glutathione levels in the body for detoxification and immune function. Advanced tools and therapies, therapeutic plasma exchange, stem cells. The state of Florida, as businesses operate, have to say cell therapy. PRP, exosomes, hyperbaric chamber, cryotherapy. Ozone is not on the slide. I wish it was. IV therapy and peptides. So these are all the very interesting things that are happening in the space that are acting on different elements of aging. So going back to the beginning slide on what is causing the aging process. So a lot of these advanced tools, there's a lot going on in the Bahamas. The regulations are a little more flexible there. Not as much in the US, but there is starting to, I think ketamine, plasmapheresis is starting to be more common. But looking up some of these are very, very helpful for just aging in general and optimizing the body. That was all my observations on what I saw. And I just want to emphasize again, that is not recommendations for everybody in this room. It's not 100% truth. It is just some observations I took over the years, which could be very helpful for people. Now, talking about healthy longevity clinics specifically in Boca Raton. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but it is very interesting what Peter Ceramic, the founder of Longevity Tech Fund, is doing. An amazing human. We have an amazing team, and the COO is here watching. What we're trying to do is create a global network ecosystem of research groups, human clinical trials, education, longevity cafes, longevity clinics, data. Data's huge, and how do we bring this all to life and help the patient as far as like the data side. So I'm going to talk a little bit on the client journey, how we operate and how we bring patients through at the clinic. First off, it's a little bit about Longevity Tech Fund. They have invested into 40 companies and more coming this year that all have one mission: human longevity. So that could be research, that could be data platforms. Our Healthy Longevity data team is super impressive. They're all dedicated to one mission: longevity. Most notable right now in the portfolio, 3 have won IPO, I believe, in the last 6 to 12 months, doing some really good things. Mitrix Bio. I would look that up if I were you guys. Keep your eyes on that. That's a mitochondrial cream and mitochondrial therapies to extend human life. I'm super, super excited about that. Tom Benson's the CEO, super nice guy. And then Age Curve. Has anybody here heard of Age Curve? It's going to be known pretty soon. This company is from England, I believe, and what they're doing is measuring aging similar to how a tree ages. So when you look at the cell under a microscope, it's shaped a certain way. Kind of like when you look at the inside of a tree, you got the tree rings. So Age Curve technology, we're actually looking for a lab in Florida that does single-cell RNA sequencing. If anybody in this room knows of a lab in Florida that does single-cell RNA sequencing, let me know, because it's been very challenging to find one. The CEO from Age Curve has the technology in England, and he's looking to bring it to the US, and our patients at Healthy Longevity Clinic would have access to that. That would be up there with the epigenetic age test I was talking about that measures biological age and the true age of the person. That could have potential to lead the market. Healthy Longevity Clinic, we have our first clinic in Czech Republic. We have advisors and medical professionals in Spain, Thailand, the Bahamas, here in the US, Asia, and the Middle East coming soon. Human clinical trials in the Bahamas, everything's been approved, and we're now planning trials for humans, which is super exciting. That's a little bit on the international team. You got Peter smiling up there. Awesome, awesome people, which is just great, right? I mean, it's just so good to work with a nice group of people that are super smart and talented and experienced, but are also just good humans that want to help people. We start with initial longevity exam, so screening the body, getting to know the person, lifestyle, medical history, goals, questionnaire, genetic testing, body composition, advanced blood work, cardiovascular plaque analysis, so low density, soft plaque. I'll talk about that in a second. That's very, very interesting. Strength, balance, and flexibility, coming back to that, you're going to see some reoccurring themes. Blood vessel analysis, bone health screening, cognitive testing, this is super interesting, and volumetric brain imaging to see how big is the hippocampus, what is the white matter to gray matter distribution in the brain. Super, super interesting. And I'd be willing to talk to anybody about that. Whole body MRI. Programs, we have a brain health program, cardiovascular, immune, cellular regeneration. We have regenerative aesthetics. Skin microbiome is an interesting situation. We've all heard of probably the microbiome in the gut, right? Well, our skin also has a microbiome. Sequential Skin would be a company to look up if you're interested on that. It's really cool at improving in skin health. And then cancer screening, a couple tools for that as well. And what I also want to say too is, in order for us to approve something in the clinic, it's not easy. So the team researches it, they know about the stuff. So it's not just like, oh, here's an idea, let's just implement it tomorrow. It's carefully analyzed and to make sure it's safe, effective, well-known, researched. This is my favorite area. I don't know why that is. I got a couple concussions in high school. I have no idea why I love the brain so much. It is just, there's a big opportunity for education on the brain. Dale Bredesen's book, The End of Alzheimer's, talks about 214 medications put on the market for brain health, Alzheimer's. I think one of them, donepezil and Aricept, delays symptoms. Maybe it's worked for some people, and I hope it has. But according to his research in his book at the UCLA, there's no medication out there that improves the symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia. Why is that? Well, it's super complex. He talks about the 36-hole theory in the roof. If you have a roof with 36 holes and you patch 4, you still have 32 holes, so the symptoms are still there. There's a 36-hole approach to Alzheimer's that has been shown to reverse signs of mild cognitive decline, subjective cognitive decline, and Alzheimer's full-blown. This guy's done it. UCLA, Dale Bredesen, check out his book. That's a lot of inspiration for creating this brain program. That's one component of what we're doing. Some of his approach, genetics and knowing the ApoE status. There was a big movie or a documentary called Limitless. Has anybody here seen Limitless? Yeah? Did you like it? Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, Bill? Yeah. Knowing the Alzheimer's gene, huge. That's also in the book. I could talk for a while just on that. Volumetric imaging, knowing the size of the hippocampus. Hippocampus is responsible for memory. So if we can regrow tissue in the brain, which would be the hippocampus, you would think that would actually be beneficial to Alzheimer's risk and dementia. Cognitive testing, memory, attention, recall, executive function. This isn't for people that just have Alzheimer's. I say that because it's such a prevalent disease in our country and everybody's affected. This program or this approach, just optimizing the brain in general, is, I think, very beneficial for people just in life and having a good brain, feeling happy, productive. The microbiome, the gut-brain connection through the vagus nerve, so we can check gut diversity and inflammation. Optimize the gut to optimize the brain as one of the components. And coming soon is quantitative EEG, measuring brain waves, electrical activity, what's going on up here as far as electricity. There's a lot of electricity going on in our body, so you can measure that. And you can improve it with personalized transcranial magnetic stimulation. Sounds crazy, but it's very interesting, very interesting. The brain, like I said, the 36-hole theory, a lot of those holes are tested on advanced blood work. So that's what Dale Bredesen does, is inflammation, glucose, trophic support, vascular, metals, and mold. You can find out a lot through advanced blood work, and then you just top it off by checking these other systems. Heart health, what are the components of the heart that are affected by the aging process? Blood pressure, heart rate, HRV, VO2 max. We check blood work as well, blood vessels, autonomic nervous system function. Advanced cardiovascular plaque analysis through a company called Clearly. They are checking, so somebody with a normal, so we've all heard of calcium scores probably in here, calcium scores for heart. There's low density soft plaque that actually develops in the artery, in the cardiac arteries in the body before it becomes calcified. So if you check out clearlyhealth.com, you can find out more about what they're doing. The Miami Heart Study, they're getting integrated in the American College of Cardiology. These aren't people that are just creating a company to try to make money. They're actually trying to create a company to flip the 17 million people that are dying each year. That's too many people. So what are we doing? What are we missing? There are cases with people with normal calcium scores, like they have a 0, but they have super high low-density soft plaque. The low-density soft plaque in the cardiac arteries actually are what break off and cause strokes in the brain, heart attacks. So if we can target low-density soft plaque, we can do a lot for the heart, improve life expectancy, and just make everybody a little bit happier, I think. Advanced glycation endpoints and heavy metals, a couple other components of it. She asked me what I would do to lower the low-density soft plaque. Diet analysis is probably number one. What's going in? I call those the insults. You do the same approach with the gut as well. So if there's gut problems, what's causing the gut, gluten, dairy, stuff like that. What is causing the plaque to develop in the artery, diet related usually. Athletes tend to have a high conversion of low plaque to calcium, but checking out what are they eating, inflammatory foods, blood sugar. There's a guy named Mark Houston. If you guys want to learn more about the heart, Mark Houston from Tennessee. He's an integrative cardiologist that used aged garlic, vitamin MK7, fish oil. Trying to think of more. There's got to be more. I'm missing about 6 of them. There's a plaque reversal kind of protocol that we have that does it naturally. And sometimes medications are very helpful as well. We do a summary. We give somebody a summary at the end of the clinic visit, which is their plan for 30 to 60 days. And then there's a longevity roadmap, which gives them the big picture on what their goals are in the year. Future testing, therapies, education, interventions, we talked about that already a little bit. Annual review, lifetime longevity plan. We would like to be with people for the rest of their life to take care of them. Personal takeaways, I talked about a lot of this already. Fasting, sleep and mouth tape, spread the word, and I do believe it has the potential to transform lives. That's it.
Erik Nelson.
Okay.
Okay, and you guys are so inquisitive. They kept giving you some good pointers and questions and comments.
It's my favorite part.
So questions for Erik. I'm sure there are some, and let's go right here.
Studies that are being done that the people who exercise are not as susceptible to Alzheimer's.
100%. Where do I start? Strength training, lifting weights. So our muscles are connected to our brain through nerves. The stimulation of muscle actually helps with BDNF levels in the brain. I know Bill, I guarantee you Bill knows about BDNF. Anybody else in here know? Yeah, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, yeah. So BDNF is like fertilizer, right? So our brain, when we're young kids like these two right here, their BDNF is super high. They're learning new things, their brain is growing. As we age, these BDNF levels go down. So our bodies are designed very uniquely, right? And we're supposed to be moving heavy things or lifting heavy things, at least walking. Walking is actually, could be a form of strength training because your body weighs, you walk and your body weighs a certain amount. So yes, strength training, and then cardio, like aerobic activity. Richard Simmons, back in the day. What's that? Trampoline, yep. Trampoline's amazing. But if we can get oxygen to the brain through exercise, actually one of the newest areas of research on Alzheimer's and cognitive decline is the lack of oxygen to certain lobes of the brain. And the brain kind of shuts down when it doesn't get oxygen. So if we can get it oxygen, get moving, strength training, VO2 max training, walking, yeah, it's all good.
Aren't they also saying that there's a correlation between diabetes and Alzheimer's? Like Alzheimer's is diabetes 3.
Yeah. Type 3 diabetes is what some people will say. I've heard the most recent numbers. If somebody has type 2 diabetes, regardless of their genetics, there's a 2 times increased risk for Alzheimer's. So diabetes, low-hanging fruit. It's lifestyle primarily. Yeah.
I have a question from Wendy, then we're going to go here, and then over here. Wendy?
Hello, thanks for that. Was an awesome talk.
Thank you.
My question is about supplements. So there's so much marketing around supplements, and I want to buy every one of them because I want everything fixed, right? That's how we think. So how does one determine what one really needs, except for you read something and you say, that sounds good, so let me try that. But how do you really figure it out?
I wish there was 1 or 2 supplements that everybody could take that would affect all those elements of aging. What I can tell you after checking blood work and looking at questionnaires and lifestyle, most people are deficient in vitamin D with K2, vitamin D3, K2. K2 helps the absorption of vitamin D. I'm not telling you to start it. I'm just, almost everybody. In genetics, we always checked 3 SNPs, they call them. Variants, single nucleotide polymorphisms. It's just genetic fancy talk. For some people have genetics that work against them, and a lot of people have vitamin D genetics that just work against them. And what we saw a lot is people supplementing with around 2,000 IUs of vitamin D, because that's what the traditional medical field says to supplement with, and their levels were still below 50. So we want 50 to 80 optimal levels. So vitamin D, fish oil, and a multi-mineral, I think is an awesome way to start. I think it's kind of boring, but it's so important. That would be like the direct-to-consumer testing market. So there's some companies out there that offer that. Wellness FX is the name of one. I can talk to you afterwards and give you some more ideas. Be happy to. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Eric. When there's another question, if I'm not there, go ahead and repeat the question for the people online, please, or if you could. Oh, sure. And we're going to go here to Devin, and this is a great time to silence your cell phones. Devin.
Could you talk about some interventions specifically for mitochondrial health, like the urolithin A or glycine, things that aren't red light?
Yeah, mitochondria, zone 2 exercise, zone 2 training, which is exercise to the point of like you're moving on a bike or walking or running, but you can still hold a conversation. 30 minutes, 5 days a week, so that's 150 minutes a week. That is one of the best ways to do it, and you're benefiting multiple systems. So I'm going to start with kind of like the basic ways, which would be exercise, diet, sleep, obviously all those things. But urolithin A, pomegranate seed extract, the mitochondrial field, I would love, if anybody has more ideas on that. I feel like there's not a ton out there. ALA, alpha lipoic acid. Let me talk to you afterwards. Something else will pop in my mind. We have a mitochondrial stack that's pretty impressive, and I can talk to you about that afterwards.
Nurse Pat.
Our biological needs are not one size fits all. I know about 20 years ago, I had genetic testing, and they mapped out which kind of foods were best for me, like onions were, what kind of exercise was bad for me. Unfortunately, I should be a triathlon, which I didn't follow. But that's one thing. And then the other thing about analysis, have you ever heard of the Zyto scan, where they do put your hand and connect it to a computer? They'll give you the 15, 30-page printout of where your health markers are. If you're in the green zone here, you're good. As it goes out, it goes from yellow to orange to red. And if you're in that red zone, they're the things you have to target. And there are 5 different companies that put out this scan. One of them is in essential oils, and they will tell you what essential oils will be good to specifically address that area. So you may want to ask Dr. Howard about the Zyto scan.
Okay, I will definitely talk to you.
Thank you, Pat. There's a question back here. Oh, Bob, you're next, actually.
Yeah, 2 questions. One, you mentioned with regard to the beginning of the thing with the brain, dementia. Mm-hmm. Are you saying there's nothing on the horizon for a cure, slow it down, or anything like that? Is that what you said?
Well, there has been, as of like 2 years ago, 214 or 216 medications. I don't know the exact year that number was like up to date. There's a couple just in the last few months that are targeting amyloid. That's a whole separate conversation. But no, I have not heard of anything that's really improving as far as medications for Alzheimer's disease.
The second question I had is, I'm a little confused. You mentioned that the calcium score of 0, you could have a calcium score of 0, but yet you could have soft plaque lining the arteries. I don't understand that.
Good.
So I thought 0 meant 0 plaque.
That's an awesome question. 5 years ago, when I was working at the other company that I started with, Wild Health, the company reached out called Clearly Health, and they brought to the table their program or their product, which tests the different types of plaque in the artery. So we have, over our lifetime, there's a huge study of was it World War II, and the soldiers that were deceased. They found out kids in their, well, I say kids, but adults in their 20s had super high levels of soft plaque. Soft plaque is like the beginning stages that leads to another type of plaque, that leads to this plaque, and then leads to calcified. Calcified's hard plaque. There's not a ton of risk. If there's a lot of calcified plaque in the artery, say the artery is supposed to be like this or like this, and there's a lot of calcified plaque, it narrows it, and they call that stenosis, narrowing, 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 narrowing. But there's soft plaque that starts, and it's like step one. And this company measures the soft plaque that happens before it turns calcified. Yeah, very interesting.
There's a question from Steve.
You did mention once about epigenetics, and I'm wondering if you use anything in your practice to help with any type of epigenetic factors.
I used the word biological age. Epigenetic, synonymous with that. So, but epigenetic age, yes, we do. That's on one of the slides in the top right. There was one that said biological age, and we firmly believe in that. I just think it's kind of confusing. There's like 3 terms for the same thing.
And one of the other main things you had spoken about was inflammation. And do you recommend curcumin for that? Yeah.
I think curcumin can be very helpful for a lot of people. The first thing I would do for attacking inflammation is getting rid of gluten and getting rid of dairy, which is in most people's diets because I was raised in the Midwest, and I had gluten and dairy during every meal. I had some stomach problems my whole life. In nursing school, I quit gluten, and all of a sudden my stomach problems went away. I've heard that story just countless times. So that's the first thing I would do. Raw turmeric and like the raw, that's good stuff just because it's the plant. And I think there's been a couple things I've heard about potential iodine deficiencies when people take curcumin. But I'm not a specialist on curcumin. I just know it's good for some people. It's just one of those. It's hard to tell for without knowing your true biological makeup. Yeah.
There's a question from Don, and then I'll get over to a couple other. Go ahead.
Yeah, very good presentation on health, nutrition, and physical exercise and study of the human body. And I have a degree in those areas. But my question to you is, with longevity, you mentioned about socializing, right? Would be a thing. But there's something else. I'm just curious how you feel about laughter with longevity. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I watched Seinfeld. I don't know why the first thing I think of is in nursing school. I believe in laughter a ton. I think life, we have to, and not take things too seriously. Everything I presented was like, all the things I've learned, but I'm a very lighthearted person, and I do that. I have 2 little kids and like to have fun. And in nursing school, there's 4 guys that I hung around with, and we had projects. And everybody's so serious all the time, and I was like, let's mix this up a little bit. The Office, I'm sure people have heard of The Office with Steve Carell, super funny. There's a picture of him as Prison Mike with the do-rag. Anybody in here know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? A little bit. And he just is a hilarious scene. So I took a picture of that, and I thought every time we would work on this project, it was a shared Google document, and I put this picture on top of the document, so every time we opened it, we saw this crazy picture of Steve Carell. But yes, laughter helps unlock creativity. It helps get rid of anger, jealousy, all that stuff. So yeah, Seinfeld and The Office. Yeah.
There's a question from Kathy.
Hi. You had pictures up of a variety of foods, and I wonder if anybody at your center has done any investigation into which specific foods give which vitamins, minerals, et cetera?
Well, Allison, our medical director, created a product and sold it to Whole Foods. So you're talking about food in general. I mean, we firmly believe in it. We don't have like we have the resources to get it, but yeah, I mean, we have a dietary resource. We've hired a dietitian that is extremely good at what she does and worked at the Cleveland Clinic. Integrative dietitian, I think, or nutrition, but we believe in it.
But I was curious as to whether you had done any research into specific foods for specific vitamins. So that you said a lot of people are short on vitamin D. There are foods that will provide vitamin D.
Mushrooms.
So, yeah, so I wondered if you are developing anything whereby people could eat so much and get so much.
In a perfect world, it would all be through food. Yeah, I love that question. We start with food. You know, if the food isn't paid attention to, supplements could or could not work, right? I mean, they're still going to help no matter what, but trying to get it through food would be great. You know, the soil in America isn't the best. The access to food isn't the best. That's a whole separate conversation, but I like the question. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from George.
Yeah, has your group studied the Amish? Because they have, compared to our lifestyle, they have a very pristine diet and lifestyle, and yet their longevity isn't even as great as a typical American longevity average.
I guarantee you we could learn some things from Amish, you know, yeah. But we have not brought that up. That's interesting.
Larry.
Yeah.
On a
practical level, how would you help people reduce the sugar intake since we have such little willpower and self-discipline in America? So how would you recommend that people would go about reducing the sugar intake?
The solution is very easy. It's called allulose.
Oh.
It's allulose, and this is a very special sugar made out of the jackfruit. It reduces the weight, and it has no bitterness, and has 80% of the sweetness of sugar. It's totally new. It's called Jacka sugar.
So did you say allulose?
It's allulose, but the problem is, like Hershey's tried to create allulose, and it's not working because it has a slimy aftertaste. And this one here is the only allulose on this planet that works 100% taste-wise like sugar. But it's not sugar. It's made out of the jackfruit in a very special secret formulation.
So Tom is saying it's made out of a jackfruit, allulosa, and I'm going to get the spelling on that.
There are some that try to copy it, but nobody could copy it. Nobody.
Yeah, we're going to learn more about that after our meeting today. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
It has a consistency between, it looks like normal sugar and powder sugar. And when you taste it, it has a crystal clear taste. It caramelizes like sugar. It reacts basically totally like sugar. Because what the people don't know is that cancer cells are living from fermentation. And the fermentation is created by sugar. The sugar feeds the cancer cells. And cancer cells have 15% more sugar receptors than other cells. So the more sugar you drink or eat, the earlier you're going to die. Very easy story.
Okay, so this is an interesting topic.
I like that. That's what I would do right there.
I had one here, it's Pat.
There is a person, Bob Kilpatrick, that has Tuesday, Thursday podcasts with 20 million people listening all over the world. Recently talked on the findings of some autopsies when patients were known to have Alzheimer's. They had the autopsies for other reasons. And they found out what they thought was Alzheimer's was really fungus plaques on the brain. I can give you his information. He gives articles of research every Tuesday. In fact, I'll be missing it in an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a correlation with a lack of B vitamins and the cravings for sugar?
Possibly. So B vitamins contribute to so many systems, methylation and homocysteine, and then the whole process. Have you heard of methylation? So methylated B vitamins contribute to this process called methylation, which is about our DNA, and that affects countless processes in the body, so it wouldn't surprise me. I haven't really looked that up, but I know when there's B deficiencies in the body, a lot of things happen.
We have a question back here from Diane.
It's a comment. There are many, many studies that there are no sugar substitutes that work, that the brain sees sugar substitutes as sugar. So you're not it's not, there are no good sugar substitutes yet. If that's something I would, make sure that people realize you could just go without sugar. You could just stop eating sugar and be satisfied.
Okay, great comment. Thank you, Diane. And one last one over here for Erik. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing you touched on earlier with the cold plunge. If you get a salad bowl, and just put ice water in there and dunk your head in there for about 10-15 seconds, you can get the same effect. Another thing, sugar is more addictive than cocaine, so it's not so much about willpower. Your body is just addicted to it. And then the last thing, the thing that you're mentioning about the lab, what type of testing were you wanting to do at the lab? Like for single cell
RNA sequencing.
Okay, I'll check with our lab and see if they do.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
So divided opinion on sugar, but I'm glad to hear the comments, and great to have your presentation tonight, Erik.
Thank you.
Erik Nelson. That was great. Good stuff. All right. Our next presentation we have is our founder of the church here, the real cornerstone in the age reversal movement worldwide, and he's done so much and continues to work tirelessly toward unlimited lifespans. It would take me probably an hour to just tell all of the things that he's worked on, and I would miss things, and we really want to hear him rather than this. So let's go ahead and welcome Bill Faloon on age reversal.
Okay, first of all, let's make sure the microphone's working. And by the way, if you missed me in April, I have some really exciting news to tell you about what I was doing in April. I spent 6 days in the Bahamas, and I think I accomplished 6 to 10 years worth of productive work, meaning getting the regulatory system to accept what we're doing, influencing maybe some very high-end people who will contribute to research, and letting the world know that aging is something that might be reversible today. It might be today. This conference was held at the prestigious Atlantis Resort, which is one of the world's more famous hotels. But the people at this event were some of the most notable scientists I've ever worked with as it relates to the fundamental research they're working on now to enable us to regenerate our bodies in the not-too-distant future. Now, you see my picture up there. I'm probably the only one without a PhD or MD after my name, and that's okay because I talked on a very controversial topic in which many MDs would be afraid to, and that is, what is delaying the implementation of regenerative medicine therapies right now? We've got every day in this country.
Yep. FDA.
Oh, yeah. And I advocated for the abolishment, as I always do, of the FDA. But nonetheless, and more and more people agreed with me as I put on this presentation. But the fundamental concept that there are ways to save perhaps 5,000 Americans a day who die from an age-related disorder. It exists right now, and it's not being utilized. It's an absolute crime. It will eventually be viewed historically as one of those criminal activities that went on for far too long. And I got a really nice break. When I was invited, by the way, to speak at this event. It's again a very high-level scientific event, not really for lay people. This is for the hardcore bench scientists, the clinical study experts who are running trials to see what can slow and reverse aging. The American Medical Association published an editorial literally 12 days before I talked asking what's delaying all this technology from coming into routine clinical practice. There's a 17-year delay between the time something is discovered, demonstrated to work, before it becomes routine clinical practice. And what's really scary is only 1 in 5 of these discoveries makes it into the clinical arena, meaning that you might have a disease in which every doctor tells you nothing I can do about it, you're going to suffer and die, and yet an effective therapy already exists. So we got the American Medical Association, who used to be against a lot of what we're doing, realizing we're not doing it the right way as it relates to bringing technology into the clinical practice arena. So they're asking the question, why aren't frontline clinicians implementing these proven ways to treat diseases, including age-related disease? And they're advocating a new term called implementation science, meaning start using the therapies, seeing how well they work, and then start using them more and more as you see how well they're working. And by way of example, heart failure. It afflicts 6 to 8 million Americans right now, and it's miserable. Some of them can't walk across a room without angina pain. They're out of breath. Their body is weakening. It's not a fun way to die, and it kills over 400,000 Americans every single year. Now, they've improved ways to treat it, meaning you can drag on your agony longer than you used to, but you still suffer and you still die. Well, there's a therapy shown this year to be effective, and that is infusing stem cells directly into the heart. It was shown to reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke by 58% in heart failure patients, and in heart failure patients with high levels of inflammation, reduced it by 75%. Wow, that information available, but not being routinely implemented to those 6 million people suffering right now. But here's what's really shocking. Back in 2012, Johns Hopkins did the same study, and they showed the same results. They improved the efficiency of the heart muscle's ability to contract and instigate blood flowing throughout the entire body. This was done back in 2012, done again in 2023, and I'm thinking, when is this going to make it into routine clinical practice? And that's what the American Medical Association is complaining about. Technologies that are emerging, but they just sit there until someone pushes them through the bureaucratic FDA process. And here's something I accidentally uncovered. You may know I do a lot of writing. I mean, a lot of writing, books, magazines, and I found something by accident. In 2003, I wrote an article simply reporting on what happened to a 16-year-old boy. A nail gun went into his heart, damaged it. He was going to die. And since he was only 16 years old, the FDA let them infuse stem cells into the heart of that 16-year-old boy. He completely recovered. He was about to die, completely recovered, regained a normal life. He would have died. And yet the FDA said, you know, don't do it again. Don't do it again. You showed it works once. In 2003, don't do it again. And if I can go backwards, again, Johns Hopkins did it in 2012. Another group did it in 2023. And we've got 6 million people dying of heart failure, and we're still not doing it on a routine basis. Now, there's one individual in this room, if he wants to near the end, can talk a little bit about a place in the Dominican Republic that may be doing it. And we want to investigate that as soon as we can. I have someone going down there shortly to see if what they're doing is really working. But what we're seeing in the media is the continuing validation of everything we've talked about in this church since our inception, using advanced therapies to treat heart failure and Parkinson's and virtually every age-related disease that exists. It's getting validated in these prestigious types of publications. Now, Science came out with a study widely reported about slowing the aging process of yeast cells. And you wonder, well, are yeast cells comparable to human cells? And believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of mechanistic structures within the yeast cells that's virtually identical to a human cell, meaning if we use this therapy in humans, well, we might be able to improve the functionality of a weakened heart, a weakened liver, a weakened brain. And what the media reported, by the way, was an 82% increase in lifespan. But what we did is read the entire complex scientific paper. I actually had 2 people review this paper for me, and we found that in the yeast cells that responded to the therapy on a sustained basis, they lived 105% longer. This is a huge advance that could have implications for aging people today. So this is a little chart that I produced, and what you're showing here at the bottom is what happens if you do nothing. And we're looking at 2, by the way, genes, the SIR2 and HAP. SIRT2, silent information regulator. That's what people take resveratrol to do to kind of boost. And then HAP stands for hem-activated protein. Now, normally, if they're underexpressed, well, the yeast cells don't live very long. But in the middle, the Goldilocks zone is if you turn on SIRT2 and then suppress HAP, that's really good. And you alternate them or oscillate them. That's the word, oscillation, genetic oscillation. If you do that, you increase lifespan 105%. And what does that mean for us? As gene therapy progresses, which it is, we're going to start turning on certain genes at certain times and then turning them off. We don't want them always overexpressed. By turning one on, one off, alternating it, oscillating it, we get some really good benefits. And at the very top, the modest effect, when you're not doing that oscillation, about a 42% increase in lifespan by causing the overexpression of both of them at the same time. And we created this chart, or at least enhanced it a little bit so people could understand how significant this study is, because these cells pertain to human cells also. That dark purple line going down is what happens to a yeast cell that's normally aging. Like normally aging people, it dies, unfortunately, too soon. Now, the red dashes are what happens is when you oscillate the SIRT2 and HAP gene. When you turn one on, turn one off, alternate that, you get that dramatic extension, not in just median lifespan, but also maximum lifespan. A huge advance recognized around the world, by the way, in mainstream medical publications and the mainstream media. And again, if we're able to sustain the oscillating gene modulation, you've got 105% increase in lifespan of these yeast cells. It's an incredible development. It could pertain to people in the next few years, especially organ-specific problems like liver failure, kidney failure, where you take the cells and you start to manipulate the genes, and those organs start functioning in a much, much better way. Ray Kurzweil continues to get credible publicity about his prediction about people living indefinitely extended, healthy human lifespans. And he feels if we can just make it about 8 or 9 years, we're going to potentially live forever, as science keeps advancing faster than what our aging process is killing us with. That is his prediction, and more people are recognizing this, including the Wall Street Journal. And the reason this impresses me is since the 1970s, I have been trying to advertise in the Wall Street Journal immortality. I tried to advocate, let's support some science so we can maybe not die. And the Wall Street Journal has adamantly denied me any ability to advertise because they're afraid of offending their conservative religious people. They're afraid of it sounding just too hokey, something that's unrealistic. And here they go and publish an editorial where they acknowledge, yeah, we're probably going to live forever at some point in the very near future, but do we really want that? Crazy question. Crazy question. Do we really want to live forever? And they're coming up with ideas like maybe we'll get bored. There's not enough really to do out there. So after denying it could ever work and it might offend people, they publish an editorial, and they're citing Kurzweil and many others saying, yeah, we're going to make it happen. We're going to manipulate genes. We're going to use CRISPR to edit our cells so we have biological immortality, and then eventually upload into the cloud and achieve true, indefinitely extended life. So this, when I read this, May 2nd, bear in mind, it's only a couple weeks ago, I'm reading this thinking, finally, the Wall Street Journal gets it. After, well, 40-some years of me trying to pay for advertising, they just gave it to me for free. So it was really kind of fantastic. And you know what's nice is the younger tech people. These young people who have made billions of dollars using information technology clearly see they can edit a computer program. They're going to be able to edit our program, our genetic program, so we can live a long time. Sam Altman, he's very famous now with his ChatGPT, whatever that is. It is a fantastic technology, but he is putting big money into aging research, and he feels that there'll be a pill available very soon that we can take to reverse aging. He's not the only one saying it. Some of the other billionaires are also talking about a pill coming out as soon as this year that may enable age reversal to occur. We've got some of the most intelligent, credible people on this planet across the board acknowledging people may start living much longer, much healthier, and if they choose to, they can live forever. It's our option. #1 best-selling book this year, Young Forever. Now, we didn't used to see books like this, #1 best-selling books. They sometimes be published, but they wouldn't get paid attention to. Of course, health books have been out there for many, many decades, but they're now having credible people talking about living forever if we take good care of ourselves today to make it to that level. And not just Dr. Hyman's book, Young Forever, Peter Attia. He writes some really good books about what we can do today to stay healthy. And he mentions us, by the way. He mentions groups like us that are seeking immortality, and he doesn't advocate for that, but he does advocate for living longer, living healthier, avoiding unnecessary risks that can kill you earlier or cause a lot of problems. So we had 2 #1 best-selling books on the New York Times best-selling list this year talking about living longer, and in some cases, living forever. So the dilemma we face today is how do we rapidly assess efficacy of all the different therapies out there while also delaying aging? Because if we assess efficacy and we keep dying in the process, we become just human guinea pigs. We don't want that to happen. We need to reverse aging and carefully study that. And you might say, well, let's do clinical trials. I'd like to do that if I was 18 years of age. I'd love to do clinical trials, and we'd find out what works and what doesn't in about 10 to 20 years. These are the reasons, by the way, on the left, why clinical trials are not the way to go as it relates to keeping most of the people in this audience alive long enough to live forever. Heterogeneity. We're different, very much different. We look different. We're different under the microscope. And when you do a study with lab mice, they're very homogeneous. So if something works in one, it may work in a whole mouse colony. With people, we could get 1 out of 10 living a long time, but the other 9 don't. And all these other problems with people, comorbidities, we eat different diets. We're not like mice running around in a cage. We're all taking different medications. And when it comes to clinical trials, people who want to enroll, they may not be allowed to enroll because they have some comorbidities or exclusion criteria. People don't comply like lab mice do. You feed mice something in their chow where they're going to eat every day. You give people a bottle of pills, they don't always take it. And the delays and expenses with clinical trials. We've got to find a better way to accelerate ways to identify proven methods to delay aging, extend our healthy lifespan. And to give you an example of the problem with clinical trials, you've seen this slide in this church many, many times. First came out in 2015, got all kind of publicity about the first trial ever to see if a drug, metformin, could slow aging, maybe improve overall healthy longevity in people. Look at that date, 2016. 2021, Dr. Barzilai is still talking about how anxious he is to initiate this study to see how well metformin may extend healthy human lifespans. But guess what? As of March 16th, as far as we know, not a single patient has enrolled in that study. Not a single patient. There have been delays for all kinds of reasons, be it bureaucratic, be it financial, be it just inertia, be it COVID, all kinds of reasons why not a single person enrolled in a clinical trial in 2023 that was approved by the FDA in 2015. This is why I'm saying clinical trials are not the route that we need to do to achieve immortality. Because by the time the evidence comes in, a lot of us won't be around. That is the scary proposition of it. So that really is a shocker to me that I promoted that trial, by the way, for a long time. I said, hey, enroll and everything else. And there were problems with the enrollment process, the bureaucracy, just all the different reasons why it doesn't work. Now, here's a drug, ribavirin, that I've talked about for many, many decades. This is just another example of the delays when it comes to clinical trials and FDA formal approvals. Okay, it's discovered in 1972. Now, in 1983, a number of scientists told me about how well this drug works to get rid of like the common flu and good against hepatitis C. Just a good drug to keep around as an antiviral drug. So 1983, I'm telling people, well, take this drug. 1991, I get arrested. FDA wants to throw me in jail for about 85 years because I promoted ribavirin as something that people with hepatitis C and other problems could use. And then the owner or the CEO of ICN, he started promoting it, and they indicted him also. And then 3 years later, they approve it. They approved the drug for hepatitis C, and it improves continually the outcomes of hepatitis C patients, even when combined with the newer drugs like Sovaldi and Harvoni. But about 60,000 hepatitis C patients died waiting for that formal approval by the FDA. It's a lot of dead people. And that's just one viral disease that drug can help treat. So the point I'm trying to make is this is the evidence, and we can show this with many, many drugs, beta blockers, so many medications that were available long before they got approved. And there are hundreds of different anti-aging regimens that we need to validate. And again, that 17-year wait that the American Medical Association recognizes right now that is delaying access to people who need to deal with their problem. They got a health problem, they need an intervention, and they can't get it because no one's pushed it forward. It's sometimes due to inertia, sometimes due to overregulation, but either way, we got to do something about that. So, how do we rapidly assess what's working, and how do we also delay our rate of aging, put it in reverse? Well, the solution, and I introduced this in the Bahamas, and we are still working on the fine points of this, by the way, is the Perpetual Project. We want to utilize everything that you want to do, by the way, to stay healthy, and we want to measure those effects in you as precisely as we can. And if we get enough people in this group, we're going to know very quickly what drug regimens are producing the best results. And we want to learn from history as it relates to how to accelerate research. FDR, we've talked about him before, dead at age 63. And I always perceived him as being like an older guy, but only 63, died of a hemorrhagic stroke due to hypertension. They had no way to treat hypertension back in his era. So the Framingham Heart Study was designed to identify what was causing the leading reason for people to die and suffer. What's causing all that? They didn't know back in these days. And they were able to save huge numbers of lives. We understand now the underlying etiologies of atherosclerosis and hypertension and strokes and heart attacks and so many other disorders because of Framingham. We want to do the same thing with the Perpetual Project. And I always like to use real-world examples. And now, I was alive when Dwight Eisenhower was president. A lot of you were, but he wasn't a very healthy person. 1955, he suffered his first heart attack. And back in those days, by the way, when you suffered a heart attack and had heart muscle damage, it was almost like a cancer diagnosis. You were very depressed over it because they didn't have any treatment. You were basically told if you're lucky, you'll be able to walk around a little bit with angina pain, you won't have the energy you used to have, and you're going to be a sick person until you die. And he got through the angina, misery, then he throws a stroke in 1957. He continued to have chronic angina pain, lots of other ailments, and in 1968, he suffered 4 heart attacks in 1 year and 14 cardiac arrests in 1 year. 14 miserable years of life Dwight D. Eisenhower suffered from, and then he died in 1969. Wow, here's the most powerful man in the world, and he didn't have access to what you do right now. If you suffer a heart attack, they'll rush you into a hospital, they'll put in a stent, they'll look at your blood workup, they'll look for ways to prevent another heart attack. Eisenhower didn't have that kind of technology, didn't have it. Neither did Lyndon Johnson, who had a heart attack the same year as Eisenhower. And men back in those days, by the way, in their 40s and 50s, having heart attacks all the time. Most of them, frankly, dying. The ones that survived had a lot of misery to have to deal with. And LBJ, he dies at age 64. And I know I've showed this before, I'm going to continue showing it. Previous leaders in this country, identical to Dwight Eisenhower, identical to LBJ, they're alive because of technology. And I'm going to use this as an example of why we can do the same thing that was done with cardiovascular disease that we're facing now with aging. We can reduce the number of people who are dying from age-related diseases if we move the projects we're proposing forward fast enough. I mean, the people who are dying from heart disease now, for the most part, are not taking care of themselves. Overweight, they are suffering from a lot of metabolic imbalances that can be detected by blood tests. They're doing nothing about their blood pressure. These are most of the people who are dying from heart disease today. So the Perpetual Project, this is one of the bigger areas I've probably endeavored to engage in, but nevertheless, I'm moving it forward. And the idea is to identify individual risk factors. Most of us in this room have had blood tests. We know where our areas of vulnerability are. We want to learn about the biomarker testing to see what our rate of aging is right now, and we want to share the data amongst the whole group. We'd like the whole group, by the way, to enroll in this Perpetual Project so that we can start identifying what medications, what interventions are working. We want to measure the effects of these different self-experiments, and we want to accelerate the science of human age reversal. Now, there's clinical trials that are going to go on. That's fine. We look forward to those results in the coming years or maybe decades. I'd rather get that information in the next year or two. And now, this is not a clinical trial. I want to emphasize that. We simply want to evaluate what's happening in the bodies of people who are self-experimenting with rapamycin, dasatinib, with the various types of exosome therapies, perinatal tissue therapies. There's so much out there right now. We want to find out what is working. And again, the House of Optimal Health. I did make a little change there to level 1. I only had room for so many, but sleep quality. Been doing a lot of research about that, by the way. It's much more dangerous than what I thought as it relates to the inability of people to achieve quality sleep. They're dying a lot earlier. They're developing dementia, obesity, all kinds of problems. So this correcting level 1 so essential if we're going to progress to level 2. And level 2 is a lot of what you heard the first speaker talk about, but he also did just what I'm doing right now. You got to optimize the fundamentals. We've got to optimize what killed FDR and LBJ and Dwight D. Eisenhower. We need to optimize those cardiovascular risk factors and cancer markers to make sure that we're not going to die of something that's treatable or preventable today, and then move into that level 2 to achieve a total house, a whole house of optimal health. So the Perpetual Project design, and we're putting a lot of resources into this to be able to look at hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people, see what they are doing, and see what the clinical outcomes are. So I can't wait to get this started. We're again, assess your baseline measures of aging, correct those markers. If your blood pressure is high, take blood pressure medications. The benefits of the newer classes of antihypertensive drugs far outweigh any type of side effect risk. And then share your experiences. Like we have this group here. We talk about what we're doing, what effects we're getting. And we want to foster the strategic alliances that this church was set up to do. Most of the people in this church, we get together every month and we have a service and we exchange information. We want to do that now on a much broader scale, where internationally people are entering data into a computer database in a way that we can identify, maybe faster than anything that's ever been identified before, what is working to keep people alive longer, and what can we do to reverse aging based on the data we collect from lots and lots of people. And I like to use history as much as I can as an analogy to show that what we're doing, I think, is on the right path. Now, a lot of people don't know. I'll just ask the audience one question. How many of you watched a movie called The Dallas Buyers Club? Well, it shows you, it was a movie about a group in Dallas that was illegally importing drugs to save the lives of HIV-positive people. And a lot of people don't know there was also a Florida Buyers Club that I was very much part of, in which we were, I would think, legally importing medications to save a human life. The FDA may not agree. In fact, they didn't agree. But nonetheless, what the FDA did is they allowed HIV people to use surrogate markers of aging, or in this case, they allowed HIV patients to use surrogate markers of HIV advancement, progression, to ascertain if a therapy worked. Back in those days, it was the T helper cells that we were looking at. If the T helper cell count went below 200, you knew the therapy was not working. If it moved above 200, that was kind of good news. So we've got already a track record of the FDA accepting data markers. And the great news is there are surrogate markers of aging that we can also look at. Now, GrimAge, that's that DNA methylation test that, again, was talked about a little bit earlier. That's a really precise measure of your biological age. So if you're going to engage in an aggressive age reversal program, we're going to suggest you go to a nonprofit group called the Clock Foundation, and they offer this GrimAge test. And then after you're through with your age reversal intervention, take another test. Let's see how well it worked. That's all part of that Perpetual Project database database that we're trying to build out. And again, we don't sell this test, but it's available through a nonprofit group, and we really appreciate them making that available. So we're using the same type of strategy that was used with the Florida Buyers Club and others to accelerate the pace of medical innovation, because what we did with HIV was amazing. I mean, that virus came out of nowhere, and it's now a manageable condition. Aging's been around forever, and, well, we know how to manage it a little bit in this room, but not nearly as much as what we want to. And if you don't want to do that Grim Age test, I regret it costs about $300, and that is a nonprofit basis. That group's not making any money. If you don't want to do that, there's inexpensive ways of doing it. Also, to measure what's working in your body. This test, with just simple blood test results, costs nothing to do. And so there's ways to measure aging. But what happened that was even better, even though the FDA says we'll accelerate, approve everything, that wasn't good enough. We basically said we want AIDS victims to have access to any medication in the world that might be effective, and the FDA eventually backed on. And they said you can bring in anything you want as long as it's only for AIDS patients. If it's for a cancer patient, we'll put you in jail. If it's for an AIDS patient, that's okay. And the reason is the AIDS patients, well, they surrounded the FDA, protested. They made the FDA's life quite miserable. So there is a track record of accelerating science the way I'm proposing with the Perpetual Project to enable people to live longer. And that is utilize all the scientific advances we know about, but chronicle those on the Perpetual Project database. So we know what's working in people, what's not working. If there's some toxicity, we'd like to find out about that too. So that is the project that I'm going to be spending probably the next 1 to 2 years intensively working on to enable us to live longer, because we don't have time. We really don't have time to delay aging. People are dying, some who are very dedicated, but they're not really taking care of themselves. They just want to live longer, but nonetheless, even if we take care of ourselves, aging is still a miserable experience. So if you want to enroll, really easy, agereversal.net, a public benefit group. Just basically you enroll your information, it takes about 4 minutes, and we will let you know then when we will have this database up and running so we can start measuring in real time what's working and what's not. And I always like to put on a slide like this. I'll probably do that every single presentation. Some people tell me they don't want to spend $300 for a Grim Age test, and yet they want to try to do some stem cell work. I'm saying, well, then how are you going to know if that worked in your body? And they just don't want to spend the money. They don't want to spend the money on research, and they want to take the money to the grave with them. This is an interesting slide. This individual died at a year younger than me. They think it was heart disease. At age 45, he's a billionaire. And I don't know what he did about the fact he was aging to death, but he did die at a relatively young age of 67. And I put this slide on at this church about 7 years ago. The founder of Subway, unfortunately, contracted leukemia, died at age 67. And wow, you miss out on a lot. But there was also a co-founder of Subway, and he also died. I don't know what these billionaires do with their money as it relates to aging. I mean, they are aging to death, and virtually none of them put money into aging research. But the younger ones are doing it. That's what's interesting. The younger tech multi-billionaires realize I'm having a great time in life, but if I don't do something about aging, I'm going to wind up like these dead billionaires. So I will always show these slides at presentations, hoping someone will realize I've got more money than I need. Maybe I should support some projects and accelerate what's going on. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions that people might have.
Okay, questions?
Wasn't it Trump who changed the law that people that are basically nearly dead can use every medication?
What we worked on with Barry Goldwater Jr. was fast-tracking medications to people that were still experimental. That requires a mountain of paperwork to be filled out, your doctor to cooperate. It requires so much that often a letter comes in the mail that you're now accepted, but the widow says, well, he died 4 weeks ago. It's still a major delay. So there's fast-track approval, but it's still a long road before you get access to it. We worked on that bill, got it passed. It didn't do what we needed. Yeah.
Any other questions for Bill?
Okay,
All right.
I'll be around as always for anyone who has any personal questions. Okay.
We have one more speaker, so don't go away. We've got something very important for you to know about. Caroline, will you come? So I told you a little bit, and Caroline's going to fill you in on the rest.
Thank you so much. I think the one thing that really stands out for me with Bill is his enthusiasm. It's really exciting to see you so enthusiastic and just going for it. I love that. That's what life is really all about. One of my best compliments that I ever received was from my sister, and she said to me, "You look 10 years younger." And I was like, wow, I've been doing this stuff, implementing it, having fun with it, and just enjoying. And we're so grateful to the Church of Perpetual Life is going to open their doors to us to have a community event. That's going to be June 10th. It's a Saturday. It'll be a daytime event. And the way that you can find out about it, I'll tell you in just a moment. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about me. My first name is Caroline, and I represent Hippocrates Wellness. It's a wonderful, incredible center in West Palm Beach. What I love about it is that the directorship of Hippocrates has been doing this. So while I was looking 10 years older, they'd been doing it already for 40 years each. So the directors are Anna Maria and Brian Clement. Anna Maria and Brian Clement will be right here to visit you and your community for a community event on June 10th, Saturday afternoon. We talked today about the blue zones, we talked about longevity, we talked about different ways, amazing ways to implement. But when you each isolate each different methodology, it's an incomplete. You have to put it all together. And so what we're going to be doing on June 10th is putting it all together by bringing in a curated group of business leaders here, right here in your community, that are going to have an experience. We're calling it the epic experience. And the reason we're calling it that is because we feel like going out to the community as a Hippocrates leader, going out to community, building communities, bringing awareness, but also with leadership in communities that is experiential. So we've got some strong business leaders that are going to come out that day. They're going to teach you things about brain health. They're going to teach you things about different methods that they're applying into their businesses and creating successes, breathing, what one person has done to incorporate a combination of breathing, type of breath work, and bring it all together. I'm going to be here today if you'd like to register for the event. Anyone who registers for the event is going to receive Brian and Anna Maria Clement with Hippocrates Wellness, just came back from Europe. And in Europe, they had a very successful tour. This will be the first reveal for your area of this information, the self-healing diet. But it's actually a mission. It's more than just a diet. He's talking already inside here about the diets, how they just don't really work. You know, and my dad, he's always drinking the Diet Coke. I hope he's not watching this. He loves the Diet Coke. That's not really the best choice. Some of you might think, wow, what about a power nap? Power nap is in here. Different ways to communicate and connect with your food. Also, we talked a little bit about electromagnetic currents. Are electromagnetic currents actually causing and creating stresses in our life? These are just some of the really important impacts inside the book. And I'm going to call it an impact book because it's actually designed to be a guide. So Brian has been researching. He's been, you know, he had a little time to be low key because he's actually out on the road 2/3 of the year. All of you, who knows actually Brian? Who knows him personally? Awesome. He's really amazing. He'll be speaking. He's going to be speaking actually on this content, the self-healing diet. He's going to speak from the platform of being a mission. We're going to have an experience that day. The way that you can register with me today. So come sign up with me today. I'd love to see you. I have a few of these books even available. But if you don't have time today to chat with me and connect, no problem. You can also register on Eventbrite. All you have to do is Google Eventbrite Beyond Epic, and the event will come right up. And if you also want to just check out the Hippocrates website, it's under the events tab on the Hippocrates website. Thank you so much, Neil. It's really great to be with all of you tonight.
Thank you, Caroline. And it's our pleasure to be hosting this health fair here for all of you and for everyone that can benefit from it. You know, this evening someone said to me, you know, you're never going to live forever. You can't live forever. The Earth's 4 billion years old. You're never going to live forever. And you know what I said to him? I said, come talk to me in 1,000 years, and let's talk about that. Why don't we? Shall we? I mean it. This event has been recorded. Tell your friends and those people that you love that they can watch this again. You can watch this again in our YouTube channel. There's a link at the top of our website. Please, we appreciate your donations. We thank you for that, and that's what helps us to sustain and continue. And I want to let you know again that we'll be in Zoom next month and in July. Stay well, be healthy, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.